Mr. Rankine, how do you know the Bible is real?
For me, it started being real when I realised there's so much evil in the world, and the only way you can combat that evil is with Jesus, with God. And how did I know it was real? Because I started living it. I started doing what the Bible says. I started going out there and showing kindness to people who couldn't repay me for that kindness, and bringing them to the gospel. And I found that by doing that, God had strengthened me, so I was able to do a lot more. I ended up running lots of different entities to help people, and that's been really successful. And it's no good just coming to Christ and sitting in a building or a church. That's not going to really, it's part of it, but I see that it's a really small part. Worshipping God is a large part, but actually walking in the Bible is even larger. So that's how I would interpret what you said.
Okay. And for myself, how I know the Bible is real is based on a number of things. Number one, historically, a lot of historians can agree with a lot of the facts that are actually in the Bible. When you look at certain things, for example, the flood, the earth used to be, and scientists would say the earth used to be one. So instead of having 7 different continents, we used to be part of one big continent, if you like, one landmass called Pangea, I believe it is. And when the flood happened, it broke up the landmass to the mass that we have today, the different continents that we have today. So that's just one of many. When you think about the Ark, historians have found what they believe to be the Ark as well. There's lots of things, even the life of Jesus, historians who might not necessarily believe that he was the Son of God can all agree that someone called Jesus did live at the time where that and how the Bible describes it. I'll have to put some links on when I share this video, but there's lots of different facts relating to that are in the Bible that relate to the Bible. But in terms of my personal experience, I know the Bible is real because I can read facts all day long and still not come to the conclusion. But the way I know it's real is because when I started to do the things that are in the Bible, for example, that initial prayer of salvation, and then later on praying for different situations in my life and seeing those prayers answered, I just knew that it was no coincidence. There had to be someone greater than me enabling these scenarios to happen. And even looking at myself as a whole, like I think the biggest proof for any person that God is real is to look in the mirror. Because when you think about how complex you are, there has to be a designer when you think about everything in the room that you're sitting in, or if you're outside looking at the nature around you. There just has to be something that creates these things. So for example, if you're in a room or even looking in our room, the sofa that we're sitting on, it couldn't have come about by coincidence that this sofa was here. Someone had to collect the raw materials, choose create the design, make up manufacture the sofa, and then deliver it here for us to sit on. So if we can believe that a sofa had to be created and designed by somebody, how much more ourselves, looking at the detail that's within a human being. It's still impossible for any scientist to create a human being out of nothing. So there has to be someone greater. So I think that's the most obvious proof that there's a God. And knowing that the Bible is real, because the Bible explains who God is. And when you start to follow the Bible, so when you ask God for forgiveness, when you start reading the word and looking at God's expectation for your life and start to actually live and trust him through those decisions, you just see things working out. I'm not saying that your life is perfect when you're a Christian, because it's actually the opposite. The Bible says that when you become a Christian, you will face persecution, there will be opposition. And if God himself, through the form of Jesus, the Son, faced opposition, even when he was doing his miracles and showing love and spreading love to people, if people still could crucify him on a cross, then you can't expect as a Christian to go through life and people not persecute you. I've had experiences where I've lost friends, where family members have distanced themselves from me becoming a Christian. And then there's been, I don't know, scenarios where I know my faith was an issue for people, but it's when God opens your eyes and enlightens you to his reality, it's just impossible to turn away, because you know that not only is the Bible true, but what it says about the future is true as well. Because when you've experienced it, you know that it has to be 100% truth. So if it's true, then it means that there's also going to be a judgment that we're all going to face, and I'm going to have to answer for the things that I do on this earth. So I might be going off on a tangent, but yeah, that's me personally, how I know the Bible is real. Because when I live according to it, when I pray, I see results. One of the biggest, or most, one of the obvious prayers that have been answered for me as well. Well, there's lots, but the biggest ones for me was my son, who we couldn't conceive straight away. There was a delay from the time where we wanted the child to when we actually got the child. And the fact that when I did become pregnant, I didn't even know I was pregnant for a little while, not very long, a few weeks, but and I wasn't kind of expecting it at that time, but God answered the prayer when he knew it was time for me to have that child. There's my car is another obvious one, because the car that we use today for everything.
Yeah,
we use it for the outreach, we use it for the school, we use it for everything that we need it for. That car has been faithful. But that car that we've got today, a green Seat Ibiza, I know that car was from God, because literally when I got that car, number one, I couldn't afford it, and but I remember asking God for a green Seat Ibiza when my previous car, which was a Micra, a Nissan Micra, when it broke down, it was going to cost me £300 to fix, and I just thought the car probably isn't even worth £300 right now, so I want a new car. And I asked God, and then God sent Colin, because at that time I don't think we were together at that particular time, but he asked, I prayed to God, and I took the day off work, and I remember that morning not taking the day off work, Colin called me just out of the blue, and asked me what I was doing. I said I'm looking for a car. The Micro wasn't working very well, but I was still able to drive it at some distance, and I was going to drive it to find cars online that I'd seen online. But then Colin said he'd found a car. I didn't know what car he'd found. I went with him. He drove me to the place where he'd seen this car, and lo and behold, it was a green Seat Ibiza. And I was able to, I think I made the arrangements to buy it that very day, I think. So yeah, that's another one. There's lots of testimonies, but when I think of testimonies, those are the ones that often come straight to my mind. But there's so many occasions where I've prayed, even for little things around the house. I can't find something, I've been looking through it, can't find it, pray, I find it within minutes. There's just so many. Can you think of any recent testimonies?
Yeah, lots. We've seen that we're in a pandemic at the moment, a coronavirus, and at the time we actually thought, okay, we were going to be in the house for some time, and by God's grace and mercy we have a garden, so we actually brought some deck chairs that we wanted, some lounges, and we thought this is great, so we can actually stay inside during the pandemic. What we then found was God had work for us to do. We didn't realise that God had prepared us, so we have what we call a very large food bank, and we was able to feed many thousands of people from our food bank. We had the connections, we had the infrastructure, we had the volunteers. So those people who we was able to supply food even to some of the local authorities who had run out of food, because some had food but it was the wrong type of food, and some of the food that we, because we're a small ministry, we normally get what other people don't want. So this pandemic, all the larger organisations had cans and things like that, but people were asking for fresh food, for which we had tons of it, and we was able to expand greatly. So we ended up doing more within this pandemic, and that was God. When I look at, I'm a qualified chef, I used to be a meat inspector, I used to do lots of things in the food industry, and worked on public health reports, worked on E. coli, BSC, and various other food outbreaks. So my knowledge is quite extensive. Anything zoonotical, zoonosis, anything transmittable from animal to man, on the man to see, something that I majored on in my educational years. So yes, I was able to use that where people will say, oh well, this is from bats or this is from that. Those who know there's certain things that just can't happen. We found that with E. coli, we found that with BSC, that the authorities really, as we found with this pandemic, sometimes can be lacking in basic knowledge. So I put that down to God. I'm glad that I was able to help a lot of ministries, government organisations, lots of schools also, and we've been homeschooling for many years, and people who wasn't quite used to homeschooling, it's a different type of education platform, and we've been very successful in that, and we was able to advise people on how to get the children to work, because a lot of people might have the hammer but not have the know-how of getting the nail in the wood, and that's where the difference comes into having just the academic framework. Because we had parents who say, oh well, I've downloaded the government website and I've got the information from my teacher, but my child won't do the work. And there's a different type of technique which we use, which has been very successful, and so we've been able to help those people, both people at the food bank, both people at education, and it's great to have the only, or as my wife would say, been at the forefront of a registered school called Homeschool Social Enterprise, and that God put us in a position for that. And even though we've seen many thousands benefit from us, it was great to be able to be there to help.
For sure. Hey, Sos. Let them know I got no regrets.